Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. Today our guests are from AAA. And up first, it's the Public Affairs Manager, Aaron Kupek. Did I say your last name right?
You did indeed.
AAA, AAA. Does anybody ever use the non-acronym anymore? Do they say American Automobile Association?
Sometimes they do, yes.
Well, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity.
For those who are not familiar with the establishment, AAA, what is it?
It is everything from roadside assistance to travel services to insurance, auto, home, and life. We've been around since 1902. So we have a lot of brand recognition and a lot of history behind our name.
I'm going to assume that since it's been around that long, that AAA has evolved greatly from when it first started out, correct?
Sure, absolutely.
What was the genesis of it and the reason why it was started in the first place?
Well, it started as really a motor club for people who had cars, which weren't that many back in 1902.
Grab one off the assembly line and yeah.
Absolutely. And in 2015, we are celebrating our 100th anniversary of providing road service.
Wow.
The road service started in the St. Louis area in 1915. It was a group of people on motorcycles riding around on Sunday, helping people who were broken down with their vehicles. And it's evolved into, a nationwide service, and in Canada as well. And we do millions of road service calls every year.
I took a trip to Montreal last summer, and it's like an affiliation with somebody else in Canada, correct?
Yes, it's CAA instead of AAA. Yes.
Canadian Automobile. Same company, basically?
We are a federation. So
Okay.
basically there are local clubs of AAA affiliates across the U.S. and Canada, but we all fall under the national organization.
Now, why would a person use AAA as opposed to the roadside assistance that maybe like their auto insurance provides? Because sometimes that's usually like included with it. I know the answer. There are so many other things that AAA offers too.
Absolutely.
Right?
We have a number of products and services that the other outfits don't provide, but also you really have to read the fine print when it comes to roadside assistance through other outfits. Before I started working for AAA, I had it through my insurance company, and their coverage didn't even get my car on the tow truck.
Oh, no
So
kidding.
you have to read the fine print. AAA is going to be there 24/7, any time of the year, anywhere in the U.S. and Canada.
And it's so popular that they basically now develop, just for the roadside assistance alone, they've developed tiers. Like I think most people have like the 100-mile kind of a thing, but that you can get a lesser tier if you really never go anywhere, that kind of thing. But it's all helpful and useful.
There are 3 levels of membership. Classic level membership, the Plus, the 100 miles, which you mentioned, and then there's Premier membership, which includes 1 additional service call a year plus a 200-mile tow.
By the way, I'd just like to state on camera that I'm a member of
Well,
AAA.
thank you. We appreciate
Coming in
that.
very useful. And I just like to say from my own experiences, the second most useful AAA service aside from the roadside assistance and all that it encompasses is, and it's not necessarily a service of AAA itself, but the ability to be able to go into a AAA office and utilize the driver license renewal thing. Very convenient. Any time that you can avoid going to the DMV is always a good thing.
Absolutely. License renewal is huge. Did you also know that we have notary services in our offices?
Did not know that.
If you need something notarized, you can come into a AAA office and we can do it for you.
Other great things, just from my own experiences, when before I took the trip to Montreal, went in just to see what was available. They gave me maps, and it's amazing. The woman behind the counter knew all the best spots. Oh, you have to go to this spot. It just, I'm sure that not every person knows every place that a person would travel to, but it was just so great that she happened to know that stuff, and I was going there.
Yeah, if you're taking a road trip and you're a AAA member, come into our office and talk to an auto travel counselor. You can plan out the route. They'll give you a triptych, print it out. They'll give you maps of the area, tour books. A lot of people say, well, why do I need a paper map? I have a GPS now. Well, you know what? Those things aren't perfect. It's another tool in the road navigation toolbox. So they are great technology, but sometimes nothing beats a paper map you can pull out. You don't have to worry about the battery being charged. You don't have to worry about having a cell signal or the GPS signal. It's always there.
Some people like to get their news on an iPad, but some people like a good old-fashioned newspaper to get their news. Same thing with like maps, traveling, right? It's this, what you know, there are people that would just open up the glove box and unfold a good old-fashioned map. And when you go into a AAA office, there's just stacks of them from, you know, every place on earth apparently has been mapped literally on paper too, right? Now, you know, earlier I had mentioned why use AAA's roadside assistance versus, you know, maybe the roadside that comes with your auto insurance coverage, but AAA also can offer you auto insurance themselves, right?
Absolutely. We offer auto, home, life, health insurance too. So most of our offices have insurance agents right there. So feel free to go in and ask for a quote. They'll be happy to help.
A lot of people think, well, AAA is good if I'm taking a road trip, but maybe they're not aware of, for example, in a couple of weeks, I'm taking a flight out to California, but you could still utilize AAA services in airports, or when you get to your destination, there'll be all kinds of places that maybe you can use your AAA card to get discounts on things.
AAA is also a full-service travel agency, so we can book flights, we can book cruises, we can set up your whole vacation. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to do it all online. But you know what? If you come in and talk to a travel agent, in many cases, they've been to where you're going.
So true.
They can give you advice about where to stay, where to eat, maybe places to avoid. They have all that experience behind them, and you're not going to get that online.
And this is what we talked about earlier about how, you know, celebrating 100 years of just the roadside assistance, how AAA in general has evolved into what it is now with all these extra things as opposed to a few guys on motorcycles starting out helping people, right? Is that still the most popular thing, the old-fashioned, you know, need roadside assistance, so call up and you know, have a truck come out and help you out?
Well, I think a lot of people think about roadside assistance when they think of AAA, and then you mentioned all the other products and services we offer, and they say, wow, you did that? So there's still this kind of learning curve that we're working with. But absolutely, people know of AAA because of the roadside assistance, the towing, the jump starts, which we've been doing a lot of lately with the cold weather.
Yeah.
Flat tires.
You mentioned, you know, some people prefer the old-fashioned map as opposed to using their GPS. On the flip side, though, nowadays, AAA, just like anybody else, is keeping up with the times and technology. Unfortunately for me, I hit a deer recently, and I am a AAA member, and there's a AAA app on my phone. So that was the easiest and the quickest way for me to get in touch with them, report it, get a tow truck, all that stuff that's needed. So you are up with the technology if people decide they want to use it.
Sean, that's a great point. The AAA app lets you report a roadside assistance event, so you can come, they will tow you from where you are. And if you use the app to report roadside assistance instead of calling, guess what? On cold winter weather days when we might be getting a lot of calls, you go to the head of the line because you don't have to wait on hold for the next available operator. Your information's already in the queue, and you're going to get service faster.
And you just have to be a little tech savvy, but if you're using a smartphone anyway and you have the app, you probably know what to do anyway. And again, you'll get to the front of the line that way. Let's talk about some things that are going on in the world right now. For example, plummeting gas prices, which is a good thing for a lot of people. Talk about that, what's going on and how it affects AAA.
You know, this is really an unprecedented drop in gasoline prices we've seen in the past few months. And rewind to the summer, we were talking about higher gas prices because there were a lot of geopolitical tensions. In fact, if you recall, just before the 4th of July, oil was over $100 a barrel, and it's been cut in half since
like 49 or something right now?
Something like that, yeah, in the $50 range. And that has been reflected at the retail level for gasoline prices. As we sit here today, the statewide average for Connecticut is $2.59, Rhode Island, $2.39. It's good news for motorists, and barring any unforeseen circumstances, we anticipate this level of gas prices right until the spring when you get into refinery maintenance season and they start gearing up the refineries to make summer blend gasoline. And you can see sometimes a slight uptick in prices when that occurs because there's some tightness in the market. But January and February are the two lowest demand months of the year for gasoline. So supplies are way up. Domestic production has increased like 70%.
Aren't we
since
like one of the
2008.
largest, oil countries now, the United States? And,
Yes.
and there's, stuff going on with that what is it, the
Keystone XL pipeline?
Yeah.
We are on track to perhaps become the #1 oil producer in the world, even before you talk about Keystone XL, because that's still years down the road.
Wow, no kidding. Even more than like the Saudi Arabia and all the Middle Eastern countries. Wow.
Now, one thing we have to be mindful of is as the oil prices continue to drop, if they do, that could start to affect domestic production because it's more costly to create a barrel of oil here domestically, mid-continent in the shale boom area, than it is in Saudi Arabia,
Okay.
because it requires more technology, more exploration. More goes into creating or extracting that barrel of oil than one in the Middle East.
Now, is part of the, there's a lot of reasons why maybe oil prices have dropped, but all the vehicles in the United States now have had to, the newer ones have had to comply with new EPA standards and stuff like that.
CAFE
Really SUVs don't exist for the most part anymore. They're now really like crossovers and sort of, glorified station wagons in some cases. So the gas mileage has improved on all these vehicles, right?
Fuel efficiency standards have improved, and that has helped a bit. We're also finding that some millennials, especially, drive a little less than older generations. But that could just be a cyclical thing. It could have to do with the economy. And as you see gas prices go down, are people going to say, oh, I'm going to take a road trip now that I might not otherwise take because I have more disposable income in my pocket? Gas isn't as expensive as it was back in the summer.
Do you think things like hybrids and electric cars will take off more? I mean, the technology seems to be coming around. Car manufacturers seem to be more willing to kind of put them out in public now. What do you think about that?
The technology is evolving, and I think you're going to see more hybrids and electric vehicles on the road in the years and decades ahead. One thing to keep in mind, because it's cold, it's winter.
Right. I want to talk about winter car care too, since you brought that up.
Electric vehicles, keep in mind that you're not going to get the same range with your electric vehicle when it's cold as when it's, say, 75 degrees.
That's a battery issue?
Absolutely. You have the additional limitations of the battery when it's cold, and also the heater is probably on in that electric vehicle, and that's drawing additional current from the battery as well. So AAA did some testing last year and found that, say, a vehicle that's electric can have a 105-mile range when it's 75 degrees. That drops to 43 miles when it's 20 degrees.
So that's a big deal,
Yes.
especially in the Northeast here where it's cold. But don't you think that, honestly, the combustible engine is so antiquated. What is it? It's been around longer than your boys on the motorcycles have been around.
It
Is it
has
150 years or something like that? Why does it still exist? Are the oil companies, are they, obviously they're powerful, but.
Sure, and you know what? That's what we're used to, and the technologies for electric and hybrid are getting there, but they're not quite there yet.
Well, people aren't pushing it. They're
Right.
not demanding it.
And I think you'll see, as gas prices drop, maybe a little less demand for those other technologies. So there are some out there who say, well, let's incentivize using other technologies to get us where we need to go in terms of hybrid and electric. So there's always going to be research in that field, and we support that. We have to look for what's next.
Quickly, because we're running out of time in this segment, it's a very, very cold day that we happen to be taping this show on. Talk to me about winter car care and what people should know.
You want to make sure your battery is good to go. You want to make sure all your fluid levels have been topped off, and you also want to check your tire pressure. For every 10-degree drop in air temperature, I should say, tire pressure drops 1 pound. So, talk about a 30 or 40 degree swing in air temperature. That's a significant amount of air that's out of your tire. You should at least be checking it once a month. In the colder weather months, more.
And finally, when will we have flying cars? When are they going to start?
I can't tell you that. No comment.
But they do have the driverless cars. They seem to be, promoting them at the trade shows and stuff like that. Public Affairs Manager Aaron Kupek for AAA, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Sean.
We'll take a short break and come right back. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We are still chatting with the folks from AAA, and in this segment, it's Steve Rourke. He is a driving school manager. Welcome to the show. First time on the show.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Those pesky kids nowadays, they still want to get their license at 16, huh?
Well, they certainly do.
Yeah.
16 and 17, although we are seeing some of the teens waiting until they turn 18 to get their license.
I wonder, is that like a parent thing sometimes?
Sometimes it's a parent. Mostly it seems to be the kids just don't have the same interest. They're able to connect with their friends in other ways.
A lot of other ride opportunities for them there, right?
Yeah,
So-
exactly, and they're also connecting with them electronically.
Right.
And
That's-
virtually.
That's a good point, too. So what are teens like these days? Well, we'll start with the teen driving. You said, you know, kids are kids. Maybe there's not as many that necessarily want to go out and get their license right away. Are they savvy about, when they're just getting involved in driving classes and lessons, and then when they take their test, they know what's going on for the most part?
Interestingly, and this is a point we make through all of our driver education classes, they already have habits. They have their parents' habits.
Good point.
So whatever mom and dad have been doing correctly or incorrectly, we then see that same trait with the new driver in the car.
Now, back when I took driving lessons classes before I got my license, one of the reasons was that gave you a bit of a small discount on your insurance. Is that still the case these days? And is it, obviously it's a good idea, right?
It is a good idea. Any kind of professional instruction for anything we do is going to be to our advantage. And there certainly is in Connecticut a discount associated with the full driver ed program with a professional instruction.
So as you're starting out, let's say a teen is watching the show today, and you know, driving lessons certainly are on the horizon. What should be their first steps? What should they do? Investigate, you know, talk to people at AAA. What's the process that they would go through?
Well, every new driver needs to have a learner's permit, you know, very similar to what we went through. And that's a few dozen questions that they need to take to pass the permit test. Basic knowledge of right-of-way, road signs, and some of the more intricate traffic laws.
And obviously they would take classes before they would take their learner's permit test.
Not
right?
necessarily.
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily. They could do self-study on the DMV website or the registry website and prepare themselves for the test that way. We do encourage, again, any kind of professional instruction is going to be to their benefit. But certainly making themselves familiar with the various laws that are going to apply to them as 16 and 17-year-old drivers. And all of the websites that I've seen with the various DMVs or registries have been very, very comprehensive with that. So that's a very good place to start, is at the state's DMV website.
You know, it popped into my head as a driving instructor and a driving school manager. One thing that you have to keep up on is the technology is always advancing in the vehicles themselves. A car is almost like a riding computer now, isn't it? So
It
different.
is. It is. We're seeing the cars be more like aircraft, and certainly the amount of information we're giving from the dashboard and the touch screens, that's what you see in aircraft. So the driver is becoming more of a pilot and has to process that information. However, the basic skills of driving, the movement of the hands and the feet, the visual skills, that's unchanged from what it was. Interestingly, I read an article from the 1950s about driver education. And they were saying the same things they were stressing then are what we teach now. So the basics, the fundamentals have not changed.
Do you think that display screen, because I know what you're talking about, it's got everything on it, GPS, I mean, things for your phone, audio stuff, can it be a little bit almost like overwhelming to the senses a little bit?
It absolutely is. It's information overload. You know, how much information do we really, really need? And one of the points I make during a parent class where we kind of orient the parents and instruct them on how to be a good coach and how to help their teen drive, is I compare those touch screens to the cockpit in Top Gun. I even say that. Go back and watch the movie again, and you'll see that what you have in the car is the same stuff that they have 30 years ago.
I asked in
at
the
an
first
aircraft.
segment, when will the flying cars come around?
Yes.
This may be the first stage of that, right?
I think it is. It
Yeah.
is, and it is overwhelming. It is information overload, and how much of that is critical to the basic driving, and how much is superfluous.
Now, these days, so kids are going out, and I see the AAA driving cars out there. But do they mess around with like their parents' car too? Can they do that? Do they take the test on a AAA car, or how does that work?
There's some options available. Certainly, the professional education that AAA offers augments what they're getting at home. You know, the mom and dads have to practice with them,
Right.
and there is no substitute for
You go to a
practice.
parking lot.
Go to a parking lot, go out onto the road. A lot of people say go to a cemetery. We don't really advocate that because
It's a little tight.
It's a little bit tight. And
Yeah.
you can do a lot of damage if you go off the road
Right.
there. So there's always practice at the home level. And again, it's kind of undoing mom and dad's bad habits. And as drivers, all of us have bad habits. I include myself in that. And every time we drive, we make a mistake. Sometimes it's minor, sometimes not so minor. But we all make mistakes. We do have bad habits. And the professional education can help diffuse some of that and give the new driver an idea of what's expected and how to develop the good habits.
Help me with a bad habit I have. Deer just are attracted to my vehicle,
Okay.
and I just, I do my best. I try to drive slow. I have my high beams on whenever possible, but my car is a deer magnet. Unfortunately, I drive early in the morning. It's dark. I'm driving down wooded area, and they are just, and I feel bad about it, and my car does too, by the way.
Yeah. The flippant answer is, well, don't drive. All right, don't drive in those areas where the deer are.
They're everywhere.
They absolutely are, and we've had some deer strikes in our student cars. So it's a very real problem, especially this time of year and in this area. The best thing to do is increase your visual lead. Look further down the road and scan more to the sides. The further you're looking down the road, and that's a key visual habit that we want to teach new drivers. Look as far down the road as you can see. The majority of our driving is done with our peripheral vision. It's not with our conic or our central vision that sees details. So by lifting your vision, looking further down the road, you'll see movement. And that's what then will draw your vision to that thing.
Do you find when you get into a habit or regular schedule or the same route every day that you get into a habit of driving by memory too?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's another point we make. We begin to anticipate the same route and the same time. One job I had, I knew if I saw the silver Audi with the vanity plate, I was on time.
Right.
They went on vacation and
good
I was
point.
lost. Okay, so we see the same things every day, the same route. We do drive by memory, and as experienced drivers, I know we've all gotten to the end of a trip. We don't remember a portion of it.
I know. That's so true.
It's become so rote, so automatic for us. And interestingly, a new driver doesn't reach that point until they've been driving for 5, 6, or 7 years.
Because they're still a little bit nervous and they're very observant because they're worried about getting into an accident more so
Exactly.
than your seasoned driver. Right?
Correct. And it's not that the seasoned driver is any more or less observant. It's just they've been able to process the information and discard it once it's done, and just deal with the situation as it presents itself. So they have that experience.
Exactly. As a driving school manager, we talked a lot about teen drivers, but there are senior drivers out there who, I guess you could say maybe could stand a refresher course or have their own issues when they're driving on the road, or maybe even they've decided to get on the road for the first time, maybe later on in life. Talk about that a little bit, senior drivers.
Interestingly, a new driver is a new driver regardless of age. And we're seeing some of the same challenges in a new driver that's 40, that's never driven, as somebody that's 16 or 17 years old. As we age, our bodies change through no fault of our own. We cannot avoid it. Our vision is affected. That's the most obvious change as we age is our vision. And 90% of our driving is based upon what we see. So that's a huge detriment to our driving is as our vision deteriorates. And certainly, the reaction times and the physical feel. There's neuropathy of the nerves, so there's less tactile feel of the controls. All of that does contribute to the degrading of the driving ability. Certainly, again, I'll go back to the professional education at any level, and refresher courses are a good idea for everything. I mean, we have, avid golfers will get refresher lessons before the season. So as drivers, we should be doing nothing different.
As we tape the show, again, it's in the cold of the winter safety tips.
Yes. Winter safety trips, again, the vision, look as far down the road as you can see, anticipate the hazards, and have an exit strategy when that hazard pops up. As seasoned drivers, we feel good about ourselves when we see a car, we predict what they're going to do, and they do it. We're proud with our ability to do that. We need to ramp that up in the wintertime and assume there's going to be an even more difficult situation to deal with. Look further down the road, increase the following distance, and understand that there can be slippery conditions where you may not expect them.
Have you seen a stick shift, a standard recently at all?
I have. I own 3 of them.
Oh, you do really?
Yes,
yeah. So you like that stuff, huh?
I do. And interestingly, in a discussion with a parent, because the whole texting while driving is a huge issue with the new drivers, this parent found what I thought to be a very creative and novel way of preventing their new driver from...
Got to have that hand on
Gotta
the stick
have
shift.
the stick shift. He says, I'm going to buy my daughter a standard transmission car.
How about in the opposite direction of the old standard, and that's these driverless cars that you see at the tech shows?
Right.
They'll be out. It'll be forever before they're out. But what are your
It
thoughts
will.
on that?
It's good. I think some of the technology, some useful technology of that will come to the mainstream cars. It's sort of like the flying cars. It's a nice idea. How realistic is it? Being fully autonomous in the vehicle, I don't see that ever going away.
But there's so much of the infrastructure of the country that you would have to take care of
Correct.
before that could. But you know what? Anything is possible. Now there are drones that deliver packages to you. So,
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
you can see it. They already parallel park now, don't they? You know?
They do, but the driver still needs to be aware of that and manage the gas and the brake.
Do you like the idea of that display panel being able to show what's behind you when you're backing up? Is that a good thing? Is that a good safety thing? Or should they
it
be
is.
turning around, using the rear view, turning around, that sort of thing?
Well, tractor-trailer drivers have been using nothing but the mirrors for years.
Right.
So the backup camera, very good idea. It shows you what you cannot see because the trunk line of most cars is so high we cannot see anything at ground level unless it's about 200 feet away from the car. So showing the tricycle behind the car as you're backing out of the driveway, that's a wonderful thing.
Why don't you give the website out for people to go and learn more? We're going to put the graphic up on the screen, but what's a basic website for people to go?
Basic website would be aaa.com.
All right, and you could probably glean your way through that and get to the driver school stuff, or
Yep,
really
exactly.
anything they want.
Yep, anything it's all tab-based. You can find out what you're looking for there, but aaa.com. You may be prompted for your zip code based upon your area, and that will get you to your local club.
Sounds good. All right, Steve Rourke, the driving school manager for AAA. We learned a lot today. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. You can see this show and many others on our YouTube site. Till next time, take care.